Grace and peace, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Seekers with Randy McFoy. This is the channel where I help seekers of the truth find the truth in the Word of God. And we're going to continue on this series talking about the kind of people that God chooses to be a leader. The kind of people that God chooses to be a leader. And we was looking at John chapter 21 the last time when we find the disciples, which is Peter, Nathaniel, the two sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples going fishing together. They caught nothing as they was fishing all night. Jesus came on the scene, told them to cast their net on the right side of the boat. They caught a multitude of fish. And then John told Peter, that's Jesus over there. And Peter jumped into the sea, plunged himself into the sea to swim, to go after Jesus, because that's the kind of person that Peter was. He was a man that was after Christ. He was a man that was after Christ. He was compassionate about Christ. He was devoted to Christ. He was after him. We're going to jump down now to verse 15 of John 21 to talk about our next point. And this is a side conversation that Jesus has with Peter. And verse 15 says, "So when they had eaten breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, 'Simon, son of Jonah, do you love me more than these?' He said to him, 'Yes, Lord, you know that I love you.' He said to him, 'Feed my lambs.'" I just want to look at that one verse for a second. So in this side conversation, Jesus asked the question to Peter, do you love me more than these? Right? Do you love me more than these? Now, who are the these? What are these referring to? Right? Who or what are the these? Right? Now, there's three possible meanings for these. Number one, do you love me more than these men? Right? In other words, do you have more affection towards Christ versus the affections you have towards these people? Right? Do you love God more than these people? Right? That's one possible meaning. Number two, do you love me more than these fish? Right? This occupation. He went back to fishing. He went back to what he was familiar with. He went back to what he was comfortable with. So do you love me more than these, more than what the world can give you, more than this occupation? Do you love me more than these? And the third one, which is the one I subscribe to, is do you love me more than these other disciples love me? So Jesus here, I believe, is asking Peter, in a sense, to compare his love and devotion to Christ against the other disciples' love and devotion to Christ. Do you love me more than these? More than these other disciples love me? Right? Now, why would Jesus do that? Right? Because Jesus doesn't seem the type of person that would ask us to compare our love and devotion with other people, right? He doesn't seem like the type of God, that type of being, the type of man that would ask us that question. And the reason why Jesus was asking Peter that question specifically, to compare his love, to compare his devotion, to compare his faithfulness with that of the other disciples, is because Peter did that first. Peter compared his love and devotion to the other disciples first, right? Let's look at Matthew 26. And we're going to look at a few verses here just for a brief moment. Matthew 26, verse 31 to 35. And it reads, Jesus said to them, all of you, this is Jesus predicting his death, right? He's predicting his death. He's predicting how the night is going to go. And Jesus said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have risen, or after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter answered and said to him, "Even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble." Jesus said to him, "Surely I say to you that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, "Even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you." And so said all the disciples. Jesus said, all of you will be made to stumble because of Christ. All of you will be offended. All of you will fall away. Jesus did not single any one of them out. He said, all of you, all 12 of you will stumble. All 12 of you will be offended. All 12 of you will fall away because of me. Right? So Jesus is predicting that they will stumble. Jesus knows what is going to happen to his disciples when the shepherd is stricken. This teaches me this. As close as we follow Christ, right? As close as we follow him, as devoted we are to him, as committed we are to him, God knows the situation that will cause you to stumble. God knows our limit. Doesn't justify it, but he knows our limit. Right? He knows the area of weakness. He knows that area in our life, that circumstance, that situation, that if we are in it, we will stumble, we will fall. That's why we are to pray, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. That's why we ought to pray that. Because God knows the situation. God knows the temptation. God knows our limits, right? So we ought to pray, lead us not into temptation, God. Deliver us from evil. Now, remember what I said. Jesus said all will stumble. All 12, all the apostles will stumble. Verse 33, what is Peter's response? Peter said, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never stumble. Even if all the apostles, even if all the disciples stumble because of you, I will not. Peter is the one that singled himself out from the rest. Even if all of them do that, I will not. Jesus put all of the apostles in one category. You all will stumble. Peter is the one that singled himself out. Peter is the one that separated himself from the rest. In essence, what Peter is saying, I am more devoted to you than they are. I am more committed to you than they are. I am more faithful to you than they are. It doesn't matter what they are going to do. I'm not going to do that, Jesus. This is the attitude of Peter, comparing his love and devotion with the rest of the disciples, with the rest of the apostles. Christ, I love you more. I'm more devoted to you. I'm more committed to you. I'm more faithful to you. They may fall. They may stumble. Not me. Not me. And since Peter singled himself out, Jesus went a step further. Right? He went a step further and he told Peter specifically what he's going to do in the stumble. How he is going to fall away. How he is going to deny Christ 3 times before the rooster crows. He went specific to Peter, like, okay, oh yeah, okay, Peter, you want to play that? Okay, Peter, this is what you specifically going to do. Before dawn, you're going to deny me 3 times. So when we get to John chapter 21, and he said, "Do you love me more than these?" Jesus was testing his pride. Jesus was testing Peter to see if he is still comparing his love and devotion with others. He's testing him to see if he's still of the same mind as before. Leaders, if you want to be a leader, you have to be careful that you are not comparing your love to God with others, that you're not comparing your devotion to God with others, that you're not comparing your commitment to God with others. Be careful that you're not comparing your prayer life with others, like, oh, I pray longer than everyone else. No, don't compare your study habits with others. Mothers, don't compare your motherhood with others. Father, don't compare your fatherhood with others. Don't compare your pastorate with others. Be careful, guys, with comparison. Stop comparing yourself to others. Here's why. You will always find someone worse than you. Right? And if you compare yourself to others and you find someone worse than you, that can make you proud. Pride can creep in because you feel like you are better than them. Pride can creep in. When you compare yourself with others, you will always find someone doing better than you. And instead of them inspiring you, motivating you, they can discourage you. Right? There were times in my ministry when I read and learned about people spending 8 hours a day in prayer and studying of the scriptures and spending 40 hours to prepare a sermon. I used to get discouraged because I'm like, I just can't. I mean, I put time into studying and praying and stuff like that, but 40 hours a week, that's tough for me. But God showed me that's not my area of gifting. They have the grace for that. Maybe I can grow into that if I practice, but I am not to allow that to discourage me. Right? Don't allow it to discourage me. Here are some other dangers. Here are some dangers of comparing yourselves to others. When you compare yourself to others like Peter, you will overestimate yourself. Peter overestimated himself. He said, no, not me. No. They will fall. Not me. Deny yourself? No, I will die for you, Jesus. You will overestimate yourself. You will overestimate how good you are. You will overestimate how brave you are. You will overestimate your strength. You will overestimate your value. You will overestimate your influence. You will esteem yourself higher than you ought to be when you compare yourself to others. Gotta be careful. Right? When you compare yourself to others, you think you're more important than you are. When you compare yourself to others like Peter, you will not be able to see your flaws and your shortcomings clearly. You will be blind to your weaknesses. Peter had a weakness. Right? He had a weakness. He was overly ambitious to prove himself to Christ. Overly ambitious. Nothing wrong with ambition, but he was overly ambitious and he could not see his weaknesses. God knows our weaknesses. He knows our limitations. He knows what situation will cause us to fall. Don't think that you love God so much that you can't fall. Right? Don't think that, oh, I love God so much it's impossible for me to fall. No, be careful. Be careful. Right? That's dangerous. Be careful. So back to John 21:15, right? So we see Jesus is testing his pride, testing to see if he's still comparing himself to other people, testing him. So Peter's response, so when Jesus said, Do you love me more than these? Peter's response is, yes, Lord, you know that I love you, period. He didn't say, yes, Lord, you know that I love you more than these. He didn't say that. He said, yes, Lord, you know that I love you, period. Which seems to indicate that he stopped comparing his love with the disciples. Like, I'm not, you know I love you. Whether it's more than them or less than them, it doesn't matter. You know that I love you. Right? So he stopped comparing. So he passed this test. He stopped comparing his love. He stopped comparing his devotion. He stopped comparing his commitment with the other disciples. And he said, you know that I love you. Peter makes the appeal to the omniscience of Jesus. He said, you know that I love you. Right? You know that I love you. And I want you to see the difference between this Peter and even Peter before he denied Christ 3 times, right? Because before, when Jesus said, all of you will be made to stumble, Peter said, oh, they will stumble, but not me. Peter was acting like Jesus didn't know what he was talking about. But here, Peter said, you know. You know I love you. You know, I'm sorry if I doubted your knowledge. I'm sorry if I doubted that you are all knowing, but I'm sorry, but right now, you know. You know. Right? You know. 3 things God knows about our love. 3 things that God knows about our love that we should understand. God knows the truth or the genuineness of our love. Right? He knows how true our love is. He knows how genuine our love is. He knows how pure our love is. He knows the truth or the genuineness of our love. That's number 1. Number 2, he knows the depth of our love. He knows the depth of our love. God knows how deep our love is for him, and he knows how shallow our love is for him. He knows the depth. Right? Some of us we are rooted in God's love. We are planted in his love. Some people have a shallow love towards Christ, but God knows it. Wherever it is, God knows it. Number 3, God knows the weakness of our love. The weakness. I believe Peter loved Christ genuinely. To some extent, I believe his love was even deep. But he also had weaknesses in his love. God knows the weakness of our love. Every disobedience reveals a weakness that we have in our love towards Christ. Doesn't mean we don't love him. Doesn't mean it's not true, it's not genuine. It doesn't mean it's not deep. If your disobedience is consistent, it may be shallow, but every disobedience reveals a weakness of our love towards Christ. And that's why we ought to stop comparing ourselves. Stop comparing our love. Stop comparing our devotion. Stop comparing our commitment. Stop comparing our love. Stop comparing, because God knows the truth. He knows the truth, guys. He knows the depth. He knows the weakness of our love. You are responsible to love God to the best of your ability. That's your responsibility, to love God with all your heart, with all your strength, with all your mind, to love God with the best of your ability. You are not responsible to love God more than someone else. That's not your responsibility. It's not to love God more than someone else. It's just to love God with everything you are, everything you have. So stop comparing, guys. Walk faithfully with God. Be devoted to God. Be committed to God by the grace of God that is given unto you. Amen. God bless you.